Hello, musicians, and welcome to the podcast. I've just changed the name of the podcast, iServalan Music and Method, because that's all I'm going to do on this podcast. And I think it's important to know, isn't it? You're not going to get much else. I mean, there will be a bit of moaning and groaning. I think that's important for, musicians. It's very hard at the moment, I think, for musicians, where, we're not making any money via streaming, and there's very limited funding now for the arts because of the general cost of living, and it's tough, but we have to keep going. So this podcast is really lots of support and lots of news about all the tools I do, because of course iServalan has a music school. The cat has arrived. Has a music school as well. And if you go to iServalan.com, you can find the music school there. And, the lovely thing, I think, about learning to play music is it unites. You suddenly become part of it's not an exclusive club in terms of, you need lots of money, or you need to wear the right clothes or anything like that. It's just one simple connection. You either love music or you love making it, one or the other. And you're united. You're part of this sort of huge energy, this organic energy that's such a massive importance, and a massive important section of the world, of the universe, of society. So I'm sort of excited about that. Anyway, I can talk. Yes, Mummy can talk, can't she? I can talk a lot about music. I will try and keep the podcasts as... No, I won't. I'm not going to do that. I can't make promises I can't keep. There's no point in me saying I'll stop the chat and be a bit more, what's the word, appraisy, a more streamlined version of what I'm doing that day. Look, I've just started Suzuki Book 2 for Viola. We're going to do all the Book 2s. So just looking really at the exercises. Now, the really important part of Suzuki and why it's so successful is because of this routine of doing oral, of listening, and that oral training, and also the little exercises to... I mean, I've just done the exercise that uses the position where the forefinger and the middle finger are very close together, and we haven't done that really. That's a sort of a bit of a new maneuver. So we're changing key, essentially. And we've got to move those fingers together. So the importance of practicing that maneuver over and over again, it can't really be overemphasized. And you could actually become a very good musician just using Suzuki. But you have to do the exercises, and you have to do, the sort of groundwork, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I'm going to suggest, actually, that the exercises are more important than the pieces, unless, this is the caveat, you want to be a performer and you want a repertoire. If that's the case, you really need to work on the pieces, but you've got to do the exercises as well. So, and if you're working towards exams, you usually have 1 or 2 or 3 pieces that you've got to do. So I know for ABRSM, you need 3 pieces from section A, B, and C. So, they're a massive part also. But if you're a bit restricted on time, for example, if what about that odd 15 minutes you have before school or before work if you're grown up, because Suzuki's great for grown-ups as well, where you want to, you usually sit and check your phone. Maybe you're having a coffee, you're in your bedroom, you're actually on your phone already, online, chatting to people, or looking at Facebook or whatever it is. Or you could actually you're going to find out when you get up and go out the house and get to where you're going. You're not missing anything, I can assure you. It's a really good time just to pick up your instrument. And what I love about the viola is it's really small. Mine always sits, on top of my recording studio apparatus. So I'm looking at it now. It's there. I never put it away. The reason I don't put it away is because it's, if it's away, your mind automatically thinks, well, I've got to go and find it, lift it up, open it up, get it out. I've probably got to do a bit of, rosin, and I've probably got to do a bit of tuning. Well, if it's always tuned and it's always rosined up, you won't have that drama. It's always out of its case. Look, you probably will have to retune. So I was just looking there actually at tuning advice as well. And I'm going to get fine tuners for every string. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want every string to be easy for me. And I do find that the viola is the hardest using the pegs to tune. It's much harder than a cello. My cello actually has geared tuners on it, so it's really easy to tune. And the double bass has geared tuning on it as well, so that you don't really need anything else. The geared tuning is so easy on the hand. You can turn it very, very slowly, very slightly. I just think, if you're learning an instrument, yes, you do have to learn to tune it, but why make it as hard as possible for you? That's ridiculous. Make it as easy as possible. This is my theory or my practice on writing the names of notes as well above, Now because I play lots of different instruments and I use different clefs, the C clef, and I play piano as well. So I've got the treble, I've got the bass, I've got the C clef. I have to translate in my head all the time. I have to think, what am I looking at? So the biggest one for me is the viola. It's always the trickiest. The cello also has the alto clef, and you've got to learn all these things. You get very good at spacing. You think, well, that's a third higher. So if you learn the skeletal, you like all the spaces, which I've sort of learned on the viola was the first thing, and then where are all the lines? So it's one extra one. You start thinking about distances, but you need to know certainly the open strings. That's key. If you learn the open strings on a viola, if you're coming from a different string instrument, learn the open strings, and then you've got that skeleton that you need, and you can then look at spaces. You can look at thirds, you can look at octaves, you can look at fifths, and fourths, and when you get really good. So obviously the second is the easiest one because it's just one note above, and it's either a semitone or a tone, isn't it, depending on your key signature. So all these little things, by doing these exercises in your Suzuki book too, they're really going to get you in tune with understanding what key you're playing, understanding where the notes are on the viola. And if you've come from another instrument, actually, great. The book too isn't, you're not very far into it, I'm afraid. So if you need to really, by book two, you need to have this licked, So do all of and I personally, I think it's a good idea to be able to do both. Now, listen and play it by memory, but also look at the music. I'm a bit of a stickler for the music because the music tells you so much. And if you just rely on your ear, yes, you can learn much faster. But, it's a bit like being able to speak Russian and understand it, or rather just to understand it if you listen to it, but you can't speak it, or perhaps you can speak a bit of it, but you can't read it. So you've got all these, barriers in your way that actually impede your musicianship. And I think that's a bit difficult or a bit dangerous, especially if you're a multi-instrumentalist. So my advice really for tuning is make it as easy as possible. Use that, we learn this in double bass, that, the best thing you should do is to use your tuning device. You can use them on your phone. You can get one that you clip on the bridge, and then tune the instrument to itself. So as soon as you can, learn the harmonic tuning of your instrument. And this is really useful, and it's useful for all string instruments, although they seem to push it a little bit more for double bass. I guess that's maybe because it's harder to hear double bass notes, especially that low E. It doesn't necessarily, especially when you first start playing it, you can't hear it. You can't, it's difficult for the human ear to actually differentiate. So you know, there's a reliance, I think, especially on those lower strings, to use whatever technology you can. And there are other things as well. You know, you can play a top C with your fingers down, obviously, and then play an open C. Well, that's obviously not double bass. I was thinking cello there. So there. So you know, all of these sort of little tricks and tools that you have for each instrument, they're really good, and you can actually, I mean, the more armor you have, or the more weaponry, I should say, that you have to your arsenal of musicianship, actually the better. So if you can tune with the big pegs, fair enough. I mean, I'm quite old now, and especially on the bigger instruments, especially with cello, I find I've got one cello that isn't geared, and I find it really hard. In fact, I had to just remove all my pegs and sort of sand them down a bit and use the peg wax stuff to realign everything. And it's a bit better now. But you know, you have to. Same with the viola. You know, you have to take the instrument, or I do, off of my neck position, and put it in front of me, and then sort of turn the pegs. And actually, that's quite a physical. You know, it's the physicality of it. It might be a bit taxing. Maybe, you know, you're quite little and you've only got little hands. That's quite taxing, actually. So if you can use fine tuners, if you can use apps, if you can use all these different little sneaky ways you have, well, they're not sneaky. It's just sometimes you don't know them. Nobody's told you. This is a problem actually with YouTube. Is you don't often hear things that might actually help you. You personally, you hear lots of generic tips and discoveries. The wonderful thing about having a teacher is the idiosyncrasies are passed down from human to human, and they're much more interesting and much easier to remember because a human taught you. And the downside of AI is that it's quite hard to remember because they're not very interesting in their delivery. Human beings are much more interesting in their delivery. So yes, there we go. So that's we've changed the name, iServalan Music and Method, and the other podcast, Immersion Static, is going to be much more about sort of film, and when I can be bothered. You know what? I'm a really busy person. I'm not sure I can be bothered to do too much anymore. We've got a new website coming as well, which is much more about art, if you're interested in my work as an artist. But if it's music that you're into, guys, you have come into the right place. You're definitely in the right spot. So welcome to, you know, Suzuki Method, ABRSM, all the other things. And I'll be talking each day about each section of the Suzuki books. And we are doing, at the moment, Suzuki Viola, Book 2. And I'll broadcast tomorrow with Suzuki Double Bass. How exciting! Very exciting.